Rod, can you please start the timer?
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Alright, so...
Alright, the timer.
Alright, good, thank you. Okay, so the reason why I believe that Eren adequately protected parity is not only did he kill hundreds of millions, if not a billion people, which some people say he does, and they're completely reasonable for thinking that, he destroyed their oil refineries. He destroyed their steel refineries. He destroyed transportation logistics. But the thing that makes me feel safe as a Paradisian person is the fact that he destroyed all of the world's ships. They make a very specific point in chapter 130 that he destroys them. They gather all of them up, and Eren pretty much instantly vaporizes them. This juvenile way of thinking, because there are more people than us, we will certainly be killed, that is very faulty. What you have to ask yourself is, how are these people a threat to us? Now, I'm assuming my opponent and most reasonable people would feel relatively safe knowing that the 20% of the world are paraplegics if they were paraplegics. But in a geopolitical sense, not having any ships or transportation logistics, that's the equivalent, one could say, of being paraplegic. They don't pose a threat. Let's say they are the 20% left over, which they are. How are they going to attack Parity? Parity is an island. They're going to have an amphibious invasion, which are hard to do for developed countries, but amphibious invasions are impossible to do if you don't have any ships. And they have to start from ground zero, because not only did Eren destroy all of their ships, again, he trampled their steel refineries, and we know that he trampled up to northern Marley, we can see, in Fort Salta. Fort Salta is pretty far up north. They're going to have to go down thousands of miles from the, northern part of Africa, which, again, Africa, the continent, down to Madagascar. That requires a very complex, intricate, and well-working war machine that is extremely, extremely difficult to do. Again, even for developed nations. Now, another thing. How are these people going to communicate, these people who are left over, right? Telegram? Well, Eren's trampled all of that. Letter? Eren's trampled roads, we could easily assume. And who are going to be the people that are going to deliver this? Eren's killed about 800 million to a billion people. The other thing is that we can look at the real world for this. We have multiple examples of this in the real world. Take, for example, Japan. What was needed to end Japan? Did we have to kill every single person in Japan? Well, no. They surrendered. And when they surrendered, they didn't fight back. Why didn't they fight back? Well, because they couldn't touch us. People don't just rashly lash out and go on suicide missions. The Japanese did do that, however, and they lost the war. Just because someone would act unreasonably does not mean that their country's going to get genocided. Because Japan did that, and we forced them into submission without having to kill every single man, woman, and child in that country. Another thing, take for example the world's sole superpower today, the United States. Now, we spend about $600 to $800 billion on our military. Second largest spender is China. What do we spend our money on? Do we have the largest army? No. Do we have the most ships? No. Do we have the most self-propelled artillery? No. We invest in air power. We have the most aircraft carriers, and we have the largest air force in the world, and the second largest air force in the world, that being the Navy. Now, why do I bring up air power? Well, it's simple. In 139, we see the Amitsubu as allies on the island with Historia and the Jaegerist. This means that Parity has access to air power, which, if you remember, I believe it was in chapter 94. Let me just double check this real quick. Chapter 93. Marley was fretting their situation because of the advent of air power. The Titans were able to dominate people for centuries because of their incredible power. But that power was waning because of air power. Parity has air power. We know that. Maybe we don't know that for sure, but we can infer they have air power in 139. And we know they know how to use oil because we see them using cars. The rest of the world has neither air power nor Titans. And remember, The general says, who was killed by the way, the general says that the Titans would do nothing but watch from the sky as bombs rain down upon them. And we all know that there's more Titans by a long shot on the Earth than there are airplanes. Yet the general was still worried because air power is a complete negator to that. And another thing before I close out is what I just mentioned, that general was killed. All these people who knew warfare, all this experience, all this knowledge that they learned, they're all dead. The captains are dead. The generals are dead. So, again, even if they did have this all, they have no one who knows how to operate this machinery. You could dump a giant fleet into the port of Marley and no one would know how to get it a mile. They could train for sure, but that would take years and years and years. And every single year that goes by, parity gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And I feel it's my last thing. That was a lie. My last thing will be this. Eren put the world in such a desperate situation they can't even think about warfare. He destroyed their farms, he destroyed their storehouses, he destroyed their homes. People need food, shelter, and clean water. That's what they're concerned about. How are they possibly going to think about launching this complex amphibious assault, much less a genocide on the Paradisian people, if they don't have the basic necessities met? I can see the rest of my time. Rod.
Yes. The debater has 5 minutes to rebut and deny the arguments of his respective opponents. Beluga, you go first.
Okay, so let me start off with the most valid criticism of my opening statement. So you said that using Japan as a real life reference is faulty because the United States is the more powerful country and, or maybe more voluminous in population as well, and Japan is smaller. That is a good point. However, if you look out throughout the history of warfare, literally no one had to genocide an entire warring nation's population in order to win a war. Now, I brought that example up because it's an example that everyone knows as an American. It's an example I'm most familiar with, but you could really use any example in regards to that. People don't go and annihilate an entire population after losing a war. That has literally never happened in the entire history of humanity. Literally has never happened. Now, as you said at the beginning of your opening statement, Eren's goals is to protect parity, and he's omniscient. So why would he leave people alive? Well, that's actually irrelevant. I didn't say whether Eren betrayed his goals or not. All I said is that he adequately protected parity, and from what I see, he adequately protected parity. Again, aside from everything I said in my opening statement, I just would like to know how this amphibious invasion is going to happen. I would like to know that. As a Paradisian person, I don't care what Eren's goals are, or how much power he has, because he make it so I feel safe sleeping at night, because I know there's no way that land army that's sufficient enough to beat parity in an armed conflict is going to come over. And you mentioned the last 6 pages, which I'm glad that you said it doesn't really matter who it is. So don't know why you mentioned it in the first place. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is because I'm just not going to get into debate about what happened where in the last 6 pages, because there's no empirical data to prove what happened either way. Now, I want to touch again on the real life references. And Rod, please tell me if I missed one of his points here, because that's breaking debate rules. The reason why I use real life references in general is simply because if the story is not realistic, there's no use debating it. Why can't Eren just do 4% rumbling then? Wouldn't 4% be enough then? Because it's a fictional scenario? No. We're sticking to the real world. And you want to get into a complex geopolitical debate, which I am more than happy to do. So yes, I will be using the real world in my conversations, because we see examples throughout history of similar situations, and Attack on Titan does not deviate far from reality in this aspect of the story. Now, Rod, if that's everything, I would cede the rest of my time.
So that was it.
Was that all those points? Did I miss something? Infamous, you can jump in too.
I think so, I guess.
Restore the counter then.
So, should I be using this time to question you, or using this time to just rebuttal?
No, cross X is when we question each other, which is 15 minutes. You are now refuting my opening statement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Roddy got your ass.
Is it just me or I cannot hear Beluga? Oh. Okay, what the fuck?
Alright then, we will go now to the cross-examination phase of the debates. Now both candidates will have 15 minutes to make comments on each other.
Okay, so you want to go first, Infamous?
Yeah, so this is the question.
Yeah, so you ask me questions. I can't ask you anything. I have to answer your questions. So.
Okay. And obviously, feel free to disqualify any question that you feel is loaded.
That's Raj's job. I can't. That's biased. I can't do that.
Regardless, why is it, from your perspective, that we discount the inevitable results in parody when just even discussing whether or not Eren adequately defended the island?
Can you repeat that?
Why do we discount the inevitable outcome, or the inevitable destruction of parody, as it pertains to Eren adequately defending parody?
Because in geopolitics, nothing's inedible. There's lots of moving pieces, including military strength and leadership. I would probably say the disposition of leadership. So nothing's really inedible in regards to that.
But given the fact that we know that parody gets destroyed, and given that we know Eren had the capacity to eliminate some arbitrary percentage of people, would it not be more of a quote-unquote sure thing, even in the moment, to just go to 100% and not risk having the 20% feel bitter or whatever negative emotion might come with being rumbled?
Well, first off, we don't know if parody gets destroyed. We know if they're engaged in warfare, number one. Number two, we don't know why or who they're engaging in warfare with. And Eren doesn't know that happens in the future because he's dead when that happens. So, from what I'm seeing in 139 and 130 and 100, Eren has made it extremely unlikely for them to do any significant damage to parody. And every year that goes by that they're trying to build up their farms, build up their oil, build up their steel, train their soldiers, that's every year that parody gets better at something. They already have steel refineries. We know this. They know how to use oil. We know this in 139. And then we know how to flight mechanics. So that's every year that goes by, parody gets exceptionally more powerful.
Okay. Just to get back to some of the more axiomatic pieces of what I said, would you agree that Eren is more or less omniscient up until the point of his death as it pertains to at least the experiences of the subjects of Ymir?
I think it's a fair assessment. Yeah, I think he's pretty powerful. Yeah, I would say he's overwhelmingly powerful.
Okay, and then going back to what I had said, I guess in my rebuttal, do you think it's agreeable that responsibility with respect to any given situation scales with the level of power someone has over a situation?
Yes, I would agree with that. But there's a cap.
Okay. What do you mean by cap?
Well, what I see is that the leader of the country has most responsibility, and I know technically the story is supposed to be the leader, but Eren is acting as the leader of the country. So just because he has more power than any other, he has as much power, he has as much responsibility as any other world leader has.
Okay, and so if I understand you correctly, and just confirm that this is your belief, Eren, short of title, right, is the de facto
Eren,
leader,
what now?
at least at the time of the he's the de facto leader at the time, like the time,
Yeah.
like the end of the story, right? As opposed to Historia, and so he bears the most responsibility with respect to parody at that time, right?
Yeah, I would say yeah.
And so, regardless of what this cap is on one, like any given individual's responsibility, we've agreed that it does scale up until a point.
Mm-hmm.
Why not, right? So, and perhaps this might be reiterating a point you made, but how is it then that you can say he adequately defended parody if inevitably, regardless of how it happened, right? He has one job, defend parody, right? So, regardless of how it happened, that shit gets bombed. Is he not liable for that in some capacity?
No, from what I see, 139, no, because it looks like Mikasa's dead after. So, and the reason why I'm bringing up Mikasa is simply to say, it's the same reason why I brought up George Washington in Debate Club. It's like, okay, so the White House gets set on fire in 1812. Is that George Washington's fault? We invade ourselves in 1860. Is that George Washington's fault? Well, no, right? And we can go down the list of every single powerful world leader that has had their country invaded or killed or whatever. I say it's not Eren's fault simply because, again, if you look at what he did in 130, it is clear to me that, barring a spectacular miracle of epic proportions, the outside world is not going to invade parity and cannot invade parity properly to the point where it's a effective war strategy. So no, I wouldn't say it's Eren bears responsibility for that. And again, it could be a civil war, as we all know, and you can't just disregard that. Eren can't.
So,
go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Eren can't defend parody from herself.
Okay, so yeah, before we touch on that, so from an in-universe perspective, then, are some of the characters, and in this case, let's be specific, right? Historia and the other Jaegerists that are running the country 3 years after the fact, right? Are they dumb, naive, or some other negative, description of them because they feel that they need to continue to fight or, arm themselves in a militant fashion to ensure their safety? Because from what I understand of your perspective is that, well, Eren's done enough, so I should feel safe day to day, right? It's highly unlikely. So are they naive for preparing in the way that they are?
No, of course not. It's very prudent. In just the same way, and again, I'm going to use the real world again, just the same way that we're safe from invasion, the United States is, but I still would like us to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on our military each year.
Gotcha. And so going back to the Civil War piece of it, right? And I think you kind of alluded to how it wouldn't be, Eren can't save parody from itself, right?
Yeah.
Was that the sentiment?
Yeah.
So before, I disagree with that. I think all leadership has a responsibility to put a system in place. Knowing that all systems are flawed, of course, but to put a system in place that will not result in the system collapsing on itself.
Because Eren cannot control human nature. A civil war is practically inedible for all countries. Most countries have a civil war. Some countries even have multiple civil wars in their lifespan, and so no amount of system would make it so that he wouldn't have a civil war, unless, of course, if he just left one person alive, like what Eren said.
Okay, and since we're running low on time,
We're not running low. You can ask more
going back to
questions.
going more axiomatic on things, we kind of assessed that his omniscience, as we defined it, was reasonable to think. In general, do we believe that Eren's actions were, I don't know, I don't feel like going on a tangent about this, but do you feel they were predetermined?
I don't. That do you feel the predetermined?
That is
Okay.
that is to say he had no other choice but to behave the way he did.
What do you? Okay. So what do you mean by no other choice?
And that's not to say he wouldn't have done that anyway, because that's what he wants. It's just a function of did Eren have agency throughout the
Yes.
story?
Yes, I do believe that. Yes.
Okay. And so, given what we know about the founding Titan, right?
Yep.
Just from your I guess perspective, was there no way for him to use the founding Titan to? And of course, I suspect you'll disagree with this, but was there no way for him to better protect or set up the people of Parity for success prior to freeing, having Ymir be freed and what have you?
This is the same conversation we had about the kid who steals the card. I mean, he could have. I mean, he could have killed everyone in the world, right? Just as though you could kill an unarmed person who's trying to rob you, right? That would guarantee it. Yes, of course. However, it's incredibly unnecessary. And the other and now that you bring this up, the other question that I keep having myself asking is, well, how much time? Well, actually, I can't ask that. But from my perspective, I think, well, how much time is killing everyone in the world going to buy? Because we know they're going to have a conflict eventually, right? And to me, it just seems incredibly unnecessary to kill literally everybody in the world when you can just kill their military installations, transportation, and infrastructure, and their ships.
So there's this whole aura of like what is necessary, and I think in part, I guess you're saying that necessity kind of defines adequacy. And of course, I'm taking a very results-oriented lens when looking at this, but by leaving 20% or some arbitrary percentage of people that will hate and resent you for, murdering their friends and families and what have you, does that not leave risk for revenge or the risk of revenge?
Of course, it leaves risk, but again, there's been hold on. There's been a bunch of people who've gone to warfare, and it does not get ended in a genocide of literally the entire country. We embarrassed the United Kingdom on the world stage. Did they come back and genocide all of us? Oh, wait, I can't ask that.
So,
but what I'm trying to say is that didn't happen.
Okay. So, given that we amicably agree that there is a risk associated with leaving some arbitrary percentage of people alive, and given that Eren had agency, and given that he could have went to 100% based off of how we framed this, it goes back to a point I made. Why, if you have the power to reduce or further minimize the risk, would you not do so, whether it was necessary or not? Intentionally opening the door for more risk is irresponsible. Do you find that agreeable?
No, I don't find it agreeable at all, because, as I said beforehand, if an unarmed child came to rob me, I would not shoot him, right? There is risk involved, right? Because if let's say he goes to jail, he can hate me, he can have brothers, he can come back and break into my house. The reason why I say I'm fine with it being whichever is necessary is because we take risks all the time, and even in our daily lives, like driving as an example. So for me, to eliminate every single scenario, even the ones that are wholly unrealistic and spectacular, is insane to me when we're talking about killing people who are innocent and have nothing to do with anything. That's why. Now, if this was inanimate objects, then sure, there's no reason not to guarantee it. But the problem is that they're not inanimate objects; they're human beings, and it is completely unrealistic to assume that they're going to do anything because of the things that I mentioned in my opening statement.
So, why? So I guess the last question I have: why should me, you, Aaron, or anybody else in the story make an assumption about something when they can be certain that by eliminating more people, there is an inherently lesser risk to parity? Like, why should anyone have to assume in the universe?
What do you mean? Like,
Especially like in Aaron's position, right? If he knows that there's an inherent risk by leaving people alive, why would he what reason is there to assume that it's not necessary to do that? Why not just do that anyway? Because you know with less people there's less risk. Given the axiom that there's other people alive.
Same reason people drive, because it is spectacularly unrealistic that anything bad would happen, and you're talking about killing human beings who are innocent. That's why.
Okay, I disagree, but I'll leave it at that.
Alright, debaters, that was it. Now we will proceed to the next part of the debate.
Okay, hold on a second.
But they try to argue.
Wait, I didn't have my cross-X yet.
Now, alright, Beluga, then you will go.
Yeah. Alright.
15 minutes, right?
Yeah, 15 minutes, and then we'll go to our closing statements.
Okay.
Alright. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, so I guess my first question to you would be, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much risk does 20% leave? And to define terms here, 1 would be like getting struck by lightning while winning the lottery, and 10 would be, taking a bear's cub away and then lying down on the floor.
Not to like dodge, but there's no way for me to give an exact quantifiable number on that.
I understand. I'm trying to gauge what exactly, because we agree that there's risk, so to speak, involved. I'm trying to figure out if we're on the same page as to how much risk is involved.
Okay. Let's go with 8, just based off of how the cycle of hate is presented in the story.
8. You think that parody has an 8 on a scale from 1 to 10 as far as risk factor goes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Term, for sure.
Okay, what do you mean by long term? Just give a range of a year. The years, like, is it 1,000 years?
I don't know.
Is it 20 years?
Let's go with less than 100.
So you think that there is a strong, or I probably should say more than strong, very strong possibility that in less than 100 years, the world's gonna, I assume, genocide parody? Is that what it is?
Definitely strike back in the capacity that was shown to us.
Strike back. What does strike back entail? Because again, that could be a whole bunch of things. Like, you mean like a tariff, or do you mean genocide?
I will default to the story in which some B2 bomber-looking things are dropping
B2.
shells.
So are you now making the claim that that's Marley? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just making the claim that something like that would happen.
Well, what exactly are you saying is happening? Because we saw a couple of panels of warfare. Mind you, again, the White House was on fire in 1812. If you saw the White House on fire in 1812, lots of people would assume some very horrific things happened when in fact they didn't. So I'm going to need you to explain more what you mean by what we saw in the last pages.
Let's just replace Marley with the non-parody people. So anybody that's on the outside, I suppose.
Well, so you said there's a very strong possibility, Nate, a very strong risk, that in less than 100 years, what we see in the manga happens. Now, I'm asking you, what exactly are you seeing in the manga?
Yeah, I'm referring specifically to that scene of those B-2 bomber-looking things dropping shells on parody.
So you're referring to just a bombing campaign. That's it?
Yep.
Okay, so it's okay.
Works for me.
So you want to kill literally everyone from the outside world to avoid a bombing campaign. That the parody may or may not have won. That's your, is that your position?
My position is that in order to minimize the risk, given the power to do so, I would wipe out 100% of those people.
Okay, risk for what? Because here's the thing for me. Protecting parody means giving parody an equal shot to defend herself or ward off invaders, right? So if we take things like the War of 1812, 9/11, does that then mean that our leaders have failed us and we should have genocided literally everyone outside of our walls, our borders?
I mean, I reserve comments on real life, but I mean, I don't think that's like terribly relevant here. But yes, I do think we should have killed I think the people of Paris or Eren should have killed everyone. The fact, like, even just the notion of the point of protecting parodies to give them an equal shot, that in itself is ridiculous, and I think it's wildly irresponsible by Eren to do that.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this again. So 9/11 happens. Does that mean that we should have killed literally everyone in Saudi Arabia?
No.
Okay, so 9/11 killed 1,000 people, destroyed a bunch of government buildings. You're saying that of itself, or I think it's actually 2,000 people, more than that, north of that. You're saying that in itself does not justify killing literally every Saudi Arabian, and I'm assuming you're saying that because we're relatively safe, right? Is that your position?
My position, I mean, to be very frank with you, and I don't know if this kind of undermines the actual debate, but my moral compass in the real world is different than the moral compass I would apply to fictional characters.
Okay, well, that's irrelevant because I'm talking about whether or not Eren adequately protected parodies or not. If you say it's fictional and the moral compass is irrelevant, well then sure, let's kill everyone. Why not? Let's let parodies get genocided. Why not? What's the point in keeping parodies around if your moral compass is around? Why are you so angry at Marley then? Why are you angry at Annie then? Isn't it fine for parody students to get genocided?
So this is actually like a debate that actually happens in universe, right? Like there's the utilitarian arguments made, right? And Eren said he can't accept an end like that, so he's selfish, or he values his friends and family in the universe more than the people he doesn't fucking know. That sounds very reasonable to me for the moral compass that I would apply to their world. And so yeah, that's why that's the case.
Well,
that's why I wouldn't allow. If I'm Eren, that's why I would not allow parodies to get trampled, because ultimately it's okay to be selfish.
So you're saying you're a utilitarian in real life, but you're not a utilitarian in Attack on Titan?
That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in Attack on Titan, the utilitarian argument isn't one that Eren should just accept, nor did he accept.
I don't accept it either, which is why again, the rumbling was not some cute fluffy thing that killed hundreds of millions of people, right? So I'm not a utilitarian at all. But what I'm saying to you is, you're fine with thousands of Americans dying in 9/11 and not genociding literally everyone in Saudi Arabia. I simply ask you why.
I mean, so as it pertains to 9/11, it's because everybody in Saudi Arabia isn't complicit in the ideology that would inevitably lead the Taliban and those who are working with them in 9/11.
So you think that literally everyone outside the walls agrees with hating Eldia and wanting to genocide them?
Definitely not.
Okay, so you admit that not everyone hates Eldia. In fact, we know that people are sympathetic towards the Eldians. But at the same time, you still want to genocide them, literally all of them, to avoid what?
The risk of the outside world decimating my people in Paradise if I'm Eren.
Okay, when you say decimate, do you mean kill a tenth of the population, or do you mean genocide?
Either or.
Okay.
I'd want to prevent any violent situation.
Okay.
Whatever works.
You want to prevent any violent situation. Well, unfortunately for you, that is literally impossible. If you want to prevent any violent situation, do what Erwin said to do. Reduce the human population down to 1. If you are actually considering killing 800 million people, or 800 million to a billion people, and more, to avoid violence not happening, not only is that an exercise in futility, it is extremely morally deplorable.
There's no question there, so go on.
Okay, so you agree it's an exercise in futility?
I'm okay with agreeing with that. It could be naive, it could be stupid, but ultimately it would be an action that I believe would minimize the risk.
Well, I just said it was an exercise in futility. You said
being morally deplorable, it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, I don't care about the morals either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with accepting that.
Huh?
And so to be clear with like my answer, I'm okay with describing it as such because ultimately for me the ends would justify the means in the context of Attack on Titan.
No, you don't understand what I said. I said it's an exercise in futility. Therefore, it is morally deplorable because you're killing people for something that is going to happen within not 100 years, within 20 years there'll be violence. So that is why it's morally deplorable. It's not morally deplorable because you want to defend your country. Defending your country is a noble thing to do. And I am not the person that you can say, well, I want to help my country and F the rest of the world. I'm totally on board with that. The problem is that, again, Eren, from what we see, 100, 130, he did a pretty damn good job doing that, and you want to kill literally everyone in the world because you want to avoid violence happening, which is exercise in futility. Right?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is. I have nothing else to say. I will see the rest of my time. What the hell? Rod?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Just making sure everything's good. Alright, Rod, if Infamous wants to go first, he can go right ahead.
Beluga, you go first. You'll have 8 minutes in total, then Infamous will go. We'll have 8 minutes in total. Then we will do a poll.
Oh, a poll.
To try to democratically choose our winner.
Alright.
Alright, Beluga, you go first.
I mean, I don't think it's fair to do a poll because it's mostly EDs here, but go ahead.
1, 2, 3.
All right, welcome. I forgot how to pronounce your name. Welcome. Anyway, so what do we see in this debate? Well, I thought I articulated pretty clearly that it is extremely, extremely unlikely for people with no farms, no storehouses, no oil, no steel, no ships, no captains, no soldiers, and I hope you guys remember that they brought even their towed artillery to stop Eren, and that was vaporized. So I think I articulate pretty clearly that it's a spectacular anomaly if Parody gets genocided, right? Now, my opponent during the cross-ex said that he knew his goal
I just wanted your opinion, but we cannot come to terms via text regarding that.